bunch of radishes. Hello, welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather. I have some rabbit in the crock pot. I just got it going. That little disc is goat fat since I used some bone broth to make the gravy. That is going just to be cooking all day, and later on we will pick the side dish that's going to go with. But I have a project that I have to do today. It is not cleaning the kitchen. I have officially decided that a messy house is usually the result of a busy life, and that's okay. It is just such a beautiful day outside that I didn't want to waste it. And I'm actually overdue for watering here in the greenhouse. And since we converted the greenhouse into raised beds, I have been hand watering. But taking this here wand and putting it at the base of each plant and watering each plant for about 30 seconds. This is quite a big space. I mean, really, if you come here in real life, it doesn't look like that much space, but there's really a lot of plants packed in here. Our greenhouse is 40 feet long and 25 feet wide, and it takes me literally 2 hours to hand water in here. And so you can see how that would just be a task that wouldn't necessarily be looked forward to. And so I am way overdue for putting a drip irrigation system in the greenhouse. So that's the project today. It's probably going to take me about as long as hand watering would have, but then the work is done and we can just water with the drip. So if you look around, you will see remnants of an irrigation system that I did have in here when we were growing in ground. This here is the main line that is attached to a hose that's outside. Look, I've got birds in here. We haven't had birds in here much to speak of at all since I put in these are called terror eyeballs or something like that, but they're here now. However, the plants are big enough to where the birds can't damage them, so I guess it's fine. But the main line attaches to our freeze-free hydrant that's out here. This is actually the hose, so I'm gonna undo this. This down here, this is the main line. There's junk in it. That is not ideal. So I've got some things to kind of clean out and some irrigation to set, which it's not ideal to try to put irrigation amongst plants that are this big just because it's a little bit cumbersome, but I did it to myself. Cauliflower's coming, and broccoli too. More broccoli. And Brussels sprouts. These are going a little bit slower than I thought they might. And we've got cabbage, and we've got kale, and we've got kohlrabi, and all the things, but this is not a garden tour. So I actually had purchased a... Was that a spider? Oh, I'll probably see that in editing. I hate that when I see spiders on me in editing, or like wasps on my shoulder that I didn't know were there. The things that we don't know that happen around us. Anywho, I had purchased a different type of irrigation system earlier in the year with the intention to use it, and I set it up on one of the beds at the end, and I don't know if I am doing something wrong, but I can't get these to work at all. They just don't put out any water. So I've decided that I'm gonna go back to what I know, which is a different type. It's like a drip irrigation. Previously, we have used a drip tape, and that is a very great economical option. I saw this through Grower Solution, and I thought that I would get it. It was on sale. It's got these little holes here, and this drip tubing, in theory, I can kind of wind around the bed a little bit easier than maybe I could with that drip tape, and we can get like a thorough soaking every time we water. Unfortunately, that mainline tubing that I had originally in here for the rows that I had when we were planting in ground, it has too many big holes at too many points that don't make sense for the way the greenhouse is set up right now. They do make little goof plugs that you can plug holes with, and I have tried that. For some reason, it's not getting a good seal, so every time I turn the water on, water's kind of spraying out of those holes, and so I bought new tubing, new mainline tubing. Is that a potato beetle? The tubing's been sitting around the greenhouse all summer. I mean, it's probably not ideal because you don't want anything really getting inside your lines that could clog the little drip holes and things in the future. It might be one of the reasons that I couldn't get this system working. Hopefully this is easier for me to manage. I don't actually know. There are some aspects of the old irrigation system that I can reuse. As an example, there's this little round, it's like a figure 8 plastic piece that just kinks the main line closed. A lot of this seems really intimidating if you don't know how irrigation works, but it's actually quite simple. Like, you just kink the hose in order to stop the flow of water. This is the main line that needs replacing. I'm gonna hang on to this. And then I'm also keeping this from the old system. It is going to need to be sprayed out, but this is actually two different pieces. There is this piece that connects to the main line and makes it adaptable to fit on your hose bib. And this one is a flow regulator, so we don't necessarily want to be using the full pressure that is in our water line to put it through that little tiny tube, because it might not end well for the tube. So this, I think it takes it down to only 15 psi, and they do make filters to put on ahead of this to kind of filter out anything that might be in the groundwater to help keep your lines clean. I do not have one of those special filters necessarily, but they do have this little filter here. This just came with this piece. I will be spraying this out, but this is another thing that I'm hanging on to use with the new hose. So at this point, it's pretty basic what I'm doing. I'm just gonna unroll this mainline tubing to be the width of the greenhouse, and then we will be taking more tubing and running it up the middle of the walkways here to help give us like an access for the water for the individual beds. So here we have the end of the main line hose, and this is where it's going to end. It's where it's going to stop the flow of water and redirect it up the rows. So I am going to use our figure 8 piece that we grabbed off the other system, this, and make a kink that holds. That's all it takes. And I have lots of these landscape staples that I'm going to be using to kind of keep everything where I want it. There we go. Okay. So I thought I had eyeballed this to be long enough, but it's not quite. It's probably 18 inches short. For now, I'm just going to set it up as is, and I can use my hose to extend to this and get the water flowing, so that works. But the way that this attaches is actually pretty simple. Here's our main line, and here's where it goes. We've slipped this right over the taper, and there's some threading in here, and when we crank this down, it holds the main line on, and then it's attached. Crank that bit down, and then it's attached. Down here I have another piece of main line that's going to come off of the main line that we just ran in a T and feed water up this row here. I had already set this up earlier in the year when I tried to set up that other system, and so this is really ready to go. I just need to cut the main line and attach it to the T just like we did outside. Now that's attached, and I'm gonna secure it with one of those garden staples so it doesn't move around. Ow. Okay, there we go. Now when it comes to actually getting the water into the bed, I have to also tee into this other main line that we ran up the row with our drip tape, or I guess it's drip tubing. I've got these little connectors. These are little 1/4 inch double-sided connectors, and I have this tool that's called an awl, AWL. It's got a point on it, and it's going to allow me to puncture this tubing pretty easily. Now, these little barbed things still don't go into the tubing super simply, but you don't want it to be really easy to pop in there, because if it is, there's probably going to be a space that water's going to be able to escape. So it's tough, but just drive it in there. There we go. All right, so that's snapped in, and now we can attach the tubing. Now I do want this to coil around the bed a little bit. I don't just want to put one strand up the center of the bed, because I don't think that's going to adequately water the space. I believe they say that the water should soak in about 6 inches from the drip port, so I want to keep that in mind, and I may do like 3 runs. This is an 8-foot bed, and so I need at least 24 feet. All right, so now our tubing, our length of tubing is attached to the main line here, and they say that you can close up the other end with a 1/4 inch goof plug, which I have here. So we'll shove that in there, and now, in theory, it would have been easier to lay this down and snake this down through the bed before the plants got to be so huge, but again, I did this to myself. I'm going to keep using these landscape staples that I have a ton of just to help me keep the tubing where I want it. I want one about, 4 inches in from the edge of the bed, one in the middle, and then one about 4 inches from the edge of the bed on the other side. These are 2-foot beds, 2 foot wide. Okay, now before I go ahead and do this in the entire greenhouse, I want to make sure that this section is working. So let's hook up the hose. Can you hear it? It's purging air right now. That looks like success to me. We have water. Beautiful. Now let's check our connections over here. I don't hear anything spewing. Now, we do have a little bit of a leak right here. And I don't know, this water is just coming down because I used the drip tape as a way to get the water up into the bed. I'm going to decide to be okay with this for now. Later on, I will be able to switch out this length of tubing for a solid 1/4 inch tubing, and we can keep all of the water inside of the bed. But this is going to work for me for now. Oh, there you are, little saboteur. It's time to spray more BT. I do have some of that still mixed up, so we will be taking care of that today because I do not want those little wormies eating these beautiful cabbages. This makes me so happy. So this main line that goes all the way up, see here, it goes all the way up the row. It's gonna feed or water this bed and the bed down there. And then I'll be running a separate main line for this row and a separate main line for the other 2 rows. So it's basically like rinse and repeat from here on out. And I'm gonna be so glad that I did this. I did shut the water off, but there's still pressure in it. That took longer than 2 hours. I actually didn't bring my phone out into the greenhouse with me, but according to my sundial, it's about 2 o'clock. So that took 4 or 5 hours, but it's almost done. I've got it running right now, just checking for any mishaps, and I only have one that I can see. It's over here. It's kind of comical. It's like one of the drippers is a sprayer. So I've got to take that section out and fix that. But for the most part, everything looks good. With these wider beds, these ones are 6 feet by 3 feet. I coiled it around 4 times. Looks like we've got a sprayer over here too. I wonder why that's happening. Even though we have the flow regulator on, I'm going to turn this down a little. We have very high water pressure, and that might be contributing. So that's a trickle for now. And then down here is the very corner of the system where the water pressure could technically be lowest. And we've got a drip, a good steady drip. Oh, several hours later now, I got the girls milked, got some lunch, and I did leave the drip irrigation going for about an hour and 45 minutes. I turned it off recently because it looked like some of the water was making its way down through the bed, and I don't want to like wash out the nutrients that are in the bed. So I think that they're sufficiently watered. I did get a new moisture meter. I used a different version of these last year, and I kind of just left them in the bed, and I think that was bad. This little nubbin on the bottom that does all the moisture detecting, it I guess is in the bed somewhere. It fell off. But we can see how well the drip irrigation did. Okay. Awesome. So I did wonder how the moisture would travel through the soil, because you can see where the drips have happened, at least in this bed. And in theory, if your soil has enough organic matter in it, the moisture is going to wick throughout the soil a lot more readily. If it's kind of, I don't know, granular and maybe more sandy, it's going to fall through. But let's see here. See, it's not even bad right there, so that's nice. Very happy. So I was going to harvest some radishes and roast them to have with the rabbit for dinner, but then I remember that we did buy a small head of iceberg lettuce, and I think that I would like to zhuzh up a salad with the radishes. I do have some lettuce growing here. Ideally, I'd like to leave these particular lettuce plants in and let them head. Over here, I've got some more lettuce. It's not, you know, quite ready to pick an entire salad out of. So I did buy some, and I did grow some sprouts to help increase the nutrition of the salad. And obviously, we've got a few things we can pick in here. It's a pretty little bunch of radishes, like a bouquet. We are getting some temps coming up this week that are mighty cold. This greenhouse is not heated and it is a wee bit drafty, so things like these peppers may not survive. I'm gonna pick a few and we can put these in our salad too. I plan to do like a full pepper harvest and clean out later on this week, just in anticipation of these not making it. They're certainly trying to live forever though. The greenest thing in the garden is my dill. And this makes me super happy. I'm gonna grab a little bit of this because I would like some fresh dill with my salad and maybe even on top of my rabbit. This is all I've been doing to harvest, is just taking kind of big handfuls off of the top and bringing them inside. I just can't beat fresh dill. I've tried to dry it before, and for some reason that dilly flavor never lasts. Now, I've never tried to freeze dry it. I might experiment with that sometime soon.
Do you dehydrate these?
Yes.
What do they taste like?
They would probably be a little bit spicy because when you take all the moisture out, it will concentrate the flavor.
I think I need to water my garden tomorrow.
It's gonna rain tomorrow,
Okay.
so you're okay.
I don't think that
You
is.
think that's enough dill? I've got a question. What's better, chicken or rabbit?
Rabbit.
This one's thinking. You can pick whichever one.
Both.
You like both?
I like rabbit.
I'm there with him.
Yeah, it depends on what it is.
Well, I like rabbit.
Shake and bake chicken thighs. I've done a shake and bake with rabbit before, but there's something about the fat, like in the chicken thigh or the dark meat itself, that is so good.
Yeah.
Well, dinner's all done, and some of you may have noticed this goat hide that I had sitting on the back of the chair. I wanted to show it to you really quickly. I am in the middle of breaking the hide down, but it is nice and tanned. It's nice and white. I just need to work it on the back of this chair every so often to help soften it up. I did download a pattern for mittens, and I've never made anything with the goat skin, really. I've only made some things with the rabbit hides, but I'm really excited to try the mittens. That will probably be something that I film in December, but I think that is all for this vlog. Now, if you had more questions about what we had for dinner, I do have an older video on the creamy rabbit in the crock pot. I'll link that up here. And if you somehow missed the fact that we've been taking fall garden tours and you want to know more about what I'm growing in the greenhouse, I have a playlist right here. I'll be adding to it soon because I owe you guys a garden tour.